I knew that when it came to selecting topics, I wanted to pick topics that were relevant to people in business, but also pursue areas of my interest outside business: entertainment, sports, science, the arts. And welcome in. We are on the air. It is the maiden voyage of the Electric Narrative webcast and future podcast. Now, I want to prove to everybody that we are taping in front of a studio audience, and if they would indulge in a little bit of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, would you help me welcome Mr. Howard Tallman.
Thank you.
The Kaplan Institute, which rises above these Mies van der Rohe buildings on the campus of Illinois Tech. The question I'd like to start with was, where was this when I was going to school there decades ago?
Well, it's not only does it rise above, but it's an intentional affront to the rest of the buildings, which is sort of consistent with my general attitude of, fuck them if they can't take a joke. It's all white. The entire rest of the campus, the 40 other buildings, this is the first new building in 40 years, first new academic building. Mm-hmm. Every other building is rectilinear and black. This was the Mies, sort of philosophy. And when this architect, John Ronan, who's a member of our faculty, designed this building, he wanted it to float. So the second floor is this huge sort of pillow, and he wanted it to be all white and to really be offset from the rest of the campus. So that's the backstory, and it's about 70,000 square feet of space for collaboration and innovation, and for everybody to come from all the different parts of the campus, which, as is every other campus, is sort of siloed, to Switzerland, to a place where you can do interdisciplinary activities, where you can have different formats for how people are going to study and work together, and where you can actually generate new ideas and new businesses as well.
How has the vision changed incrementally and long-term for you? In other words, when you come in, start your day, and are looking to move the needle forward, where are you at the end of, say, a given period or quarter, and how are you methodically advancing toward the goal?
I think that I always analogize it to the Field of Dreams, that wonderful movie. Mm-hmm. So they built the building, and then they said, here. And what we're engaged in now is developing sort of a strategy around the building, the kind of programming that's going to go on in the building, the way to attract not just students but also corporate partners, sponsors, all of the different organizations that we want to be a part of it. Much in the same way as after the first year of 1871, we sat down and said, it's not enough to be a space. You have to be an experience. You have to be a business. And so that's the same thing with Kaplan. It's not enough to be a building. It needs to be a thriving sort of enterprise. And so that's what the last year has been. And that's been the beginning of a whole process which we expect will extend several years.
Well, the whole purpose of a show that's entitled The Electric Narrative is to give people that outlet.
Yeah.
Pun intended.
Okay.
To tell their story.
All right, well, good.
And your story is fascinating.
So I'm plugged right into that.
You are totally plugged in, my friend.
Right, okay.
Your story is
fascinating.
How
many more of these do we,
A few more puns.
Okay.
You'll have to pick them out as they're said.
All right.
But your story it's fantastic. It's nonlinear. It's got some interesting twists and turns, as one would expect. And I could spend the whole program just going through the bio. But the good news is I'll have show notes for this so people can read up on you.
Okay, good.
When you think of your story and where you are now, what got you from where you were to where you are now, what does stand out from an accomplishment point of view, from just the thinking that you did, that you were able to accomplish these goals and then go to the next thing, accomplish that, and almost be an entrepreneurial crusader of sorts?
So I think it starts with parents. I think my parents imbued in me a irrational and totally unwarranted appreciation for my talents and good looks. And it's been upward from there. So that's first, is you have to have people who give you sort of unrestricted love and unconditional love. And they enabled me to do just about anything I wanted to do as I was growing up, but they were also great role models. So that was the beginning, and I think over the years I've been fortunate to have a series of opportunities to do different things, and this has been really important. And it hasn't been linear, but it's been sort of encapsulated. Maybe every 5 or 10 years I've had the luxury to do different kinds of businesses or schools or music adventures or movies or what have you. And that, I think, has presented a constant set of opportunities for me to grow and for me to take on different things, and also to create opportunities. And that's really if I look back as a single legacy, it's having 6,000 some odd employees and how they have now grown and become a significant part of the ecosystem in Chicago. They're running a number of the different businesses. And when you look back, it's really not what you took away, but it's sort of what you gave to the rest of the people and enabled. And that's really how we see all of these things. And that's true of Kaplan, too. I mean, we have thousands of engineers who are highly diverse at IIT. Our job is to bolt onto them the rest of the skills that it takes to be successful. Harvard probably 50 years ago did a survey and said maybe 15 or 20% of your success in life has to do with technical skills, and all the rest is people skills, team building, all of those kinds of skills. And our graduates come back and say, we're great the first few years, but we need an additional sort of set of tools to become senior managers and to become builders and to become entrepreneurs who run their own businesses. So that's really part of our challenge going forward.
And I know this started for you in childhood.
Yeah.
Reading up on you, one can see what you did as a youngster, and the entrepreneurial spark was there. When did you know it, though? When did you know that you wanted to take these instincts, this mechanical view of the world, and move it forward in a way like this?
I think that I was a trial lawyer for 10 years, and that was a set of unique experiences. I was probably 30 years younger than all of the people that I was doing business with. You tend to have responsibility that's disproportionate for your sort of chronological experience. And that was a feeling that was pretty inspiring and pretty interesting. So when I retired in 1980 from practicing law, I really wanted to start my own businesses. In addition, I was the world's worst employee, so it was fairly inevitable that I wouldn't be working for other people, that long. But when I was 10 or 11 years old, then I started my first sort of business, which was to do magic shows. It turned out that what you learned from that process was not how to fool the kids. The kids were easy. It was how to manage the parents who kept trying to sneak around and see how the tricks were done. And it was like telling them, even though they were paying you, it wasn't the kids that were paying you. It was telling the parents the rule of magic that a magician never tells how the tricks are done. So
I'm very frustrated watching magic.
I understand.
I want to know the answer. I want to know how they did it.
I understand, but it's always disappointing when you learn it.
Now, as you move through high school, collegiate years, saw things around you. We were without the internet back then. This is pre-internet. This is pre-technology. The technology of the day was crude by today's standards. As you moved forward, say from decade to decade, and you started getting into corporate ventures and really putting companies together and saving academic institutions, what started to click, and when did you know that you wanted to be this front central figure in innovation and entrepreneurship?
I don't think it was ever about being the front figure. It was about most of these things. When we talk about Kendall College, which was 75 years old when I took it over, and was dying. I mean, it wasn't about me, being the front person for Kendall College. It was about building a platform that could succeed for the next decade or so. And I know when I first got there, the chefs were like, completely freaked out because, I don't drink and I don't, really eat much. And I was mostly consuming Diet Coke at the time, not fine wines. And
not
this
Tab
was
back then?
Tab, maybe a little Tab, but this was their worst nightmare, to have, you know, somebody whose philosophy was very much a McDonald's philosophy, you know, like speed, quantity, and price. But I told them that I was never going to tell them how to season salt or how to make the, you know, beef Wellington. I was going to just build them the best platform that they could perform and that they could educate, you know, the students and make them really substantial. And one of the rudest awakenings was, having built this multi-million-dollar beautiful platform, when our students would graduate and they would go work at some of the finest restaurants in the city of Chicago, where they worked was disgusting. I mean, the equipment was old, it was horrible, and they were like, well, this, you know, we had the great stuff back at school, and was like, well, this is the real world, you know. So you do learn that you need to equip them with some skills to manage the reality once they get out of school, as well as what's going on in school.
Let's talk about 1871 for a moment. We'll fast forward up there.
Sure.
I remember every article I read leading up to the opening of the space was that Chicago was going to be the Silicon Valley of the Midwest. I believe it's living up to that title.
Yeah,
I think
sure.
It's exceeded the title,
Yeah.
Probably far more than anyone.
Other than me, I expected.
Well, other
right,
than you.
Right.
But
Listen, 1871 is the #1 university-affiliated tech incubator in the world. And that title will now be retired. I mean, no one else will have that title. Because they've changed the rules, not because, you know, it's that persistent. But it really did. Technology was about 2% of the Chicago economy in 2012 when we started 1871. Today it's about 14%. That's about 165,000 jobs just in the central business district, and about 9 million square feet of space. All technology related, all information technology related. And so that did put Chicago on the map in a way that it's now the 5th or 6th international tech hub in the world, the city. And so that was a radical change. I mean, it was literally the case that people thought the two coasts were where you would go to pursue a career in technology. What's happening that's especially exciting now is that it's become unlivable on the coast from a financial standpoint for most people. And so they're starting to come back to Chicago, which is really exciting. You know, we call this the boomerang effect, but they are coming back to build the rest of their lives in the city where you can live and where the quality of life is materially better and more manageable than it is on either of the coasts. So we're excited. We think it's just going to continue to grow. And if you know the geography of the city, we've pretty much eaten up everything there is in West Fulton going west from the Loop. I think the next few years will go south. And of course, that's exactly where IIT is sitting. That's where the related development is. Farpoint, the re-envisioning of the Michael Reese hospital space. So these are all exciting. It feels again like the momentum is coming toward what we're building, and that we're just a little bit ahead of the curve.
We're going to get into a more detailed conversation when Tom Kuzmarski joins us on set, the co-founder of Chicago Innovation, because Chicago is just flexing on a continual basis.
And listen, I mean, to his infinite credit, I mean, he was one of the earliest cheerleaders for innovation in Chicago, and I've worked with him for decades, and that was important. It was important to take our winners each year of Tom's competition and take them to NASDAQ in New York to ring the bell and to have their company names on the NASDAQ board. These were huge things. And he really legitimized a lot of that too. Each year they would have a lunch with the mayor and all of these kinds of things. So now we take it for granted, but not so many years ago, to be an entrepreneur in the city was A, rare, and B, difficult, very difficult.
Shifting gears,
Yeah.
if I may.
Sure. Change channels.
If I may. Is there a business model, an established and set upon business model for entrepreneurship and innovation, and how are we teaching it now at the academic level?
First of all, you can't teach somebody to be an entrepreneur. There's a series of personalities and components to being successful as an entrepreneur, including a thick skin and a refusal to quit and a bunch of other things. And you either have that or you don't. So I don't think you teach entrepreneurship. I think what you do is, for somebody who is so inclined, you teach them to be better at the skills, and there are a series of skills. There's pattern recognition, there's how to understand when you need to quit. There's all of these different tools. And I'm not talking so much about formulating a business canvas or a business plan, because we've sort of moved past that. Clients today say, show me a model or build me a wireframe website or create a prototype. It's not enough to give them some papers and say, someday this will be real. So I think that in the classes that I teach, and Nick Rokoff is here that he teaches, the goal is to give them the tools to be successful if this is what they want to do. But what's interesting, because we also teach the same entrepreneurship principles in the high schools in Chicago, these are life skills. Turns out telling a story simply, and all of these ideas of iteration and getting a little bit better all the time and perseverance and all of that, those are skills that regardless of what you do in life, it's important that you master those. And if you do, you're going to be successful, whether you're working in a company, whether you've started a company, or whether you're just trying to manage the rest of your life.
Communication skills, relationship building skills. So shine a light on that for a moment, if
Well,
you would.
storytelling,
the relationships you've built to get
yes,
where you
well,
are.
storytelling for sure. Storytelling for sure is number one. Relationships, I think, we talk all the time that it's not about making a living, it's about making a life. And, that's the intersection of having people come to feel that they can count on you.
If you would, take us through the mindset of how people ideate today and how people bring an idea to market in the attention economy.
Well, first of all, let me say that the best entrepreneurs don't move toward a goal because they master something that we call goalless planning.
Okay.
And it means that you only hope that you might achieve this particular thing. It turns out that objective and the path and everything else is going to change a million times before you actually get there. So it's the ability to deal with ambiguity, and as you say, with the bumps in the road that are skill sets that you develop over time. And it's getting up one time more than you fall down, or as the airplane pilots always say, having the number of takeoffs match the number of landings. I think it's an important basic math.
Well, we are supposed to own our failures these days.
Yeah,
aren't we?
yeah, and there's a guy, David Weinstein, who was very instrumental in the early years of Chicago entrepreneurship, and he used to brag all the time about how proud he was of failures and how much that was a badge of honor. And I think failing sucks. I mean, I just think nobody likes to fail. And so we sort of modeled the behavior around failure as saying, first you need to know when to quit, and you want to fail fast to a certain extent. And then you want to fail forward, which means you learned a lot. Some was good and some was bad. So you want to advance what you're taking with you moving forward. And the last thing is what we call in-game amnesia, and that's what every great athlete would tell you. And that is that if you're worried about the last shot that you missed, or a line call, or a putt that didn't go in, you're not focusing on the next event. And entrepreneurs have very selective memories. It's almost always looking forward. They learn from their mistakes, but they don't dwell on their mistakes. And that's a mindset that, again, you can translate to every part of your life.
What was the most important course correction you made? If you
take
us into the valley for
yeah,
just
I've gotten
a
a series of the worst haircuts in history.
Hair's
so
overrated,
I rarely get my hair cut.
Let's talk about the perspiration principles, title of a book that you have out there, one of many. Let's talk about how we perspire today, the work that's involved. Can we talk about the work, and what do you see as the future of work?
Well, first of all, there are 5 of the perspiration principles. So this is too hard to be an entrepreneur. It's just too hard if you're not passionate about it. So passion is number 1. Number 2 is you don't learn this on the job entirely. You need to have a considerable commitment to preparation, to doing your homework, to getting ready to be successful. Number 3 is then you have this issue of perspiration, just brutal hard work. And number 4 is perseverance, which is, you just can't stop. You can learn and you can change directions, but you have to do it. And then the last thing is principles. I mean, if you don't have values, you don't really bring much to this. In fact, one of the things we changed at 1871 when I got there was we added a question to the entrance sort of questionnaire of deciding whether we would let people come in. And it was, how is your business going to make a difference in the lives of someone other than you? What kind of contribution, broader contribution, were you going to make to the city, the economy, the ecosystem, things like that? So those were the 5. And those, you know, those again are things that we teach 9th graders, and we teach, you know, entrepreneurs who are in their 50s and 60s. I think those are largely immutable, and they're, you know, there are variations on every part of it. And it's funny because if you talk about perseverance, it's hard to align that with the idea of failing fast. You know, if you talk about iteration, we tell people all the time, it's okay to pivot, but not to twirl. You know, we don't want to have every 3 days, we don't want it to be a different business idea. So each of these things has embedded in it, you know, a lifetime of experience. And that's one of the reasons for the books, is that they're really a way to build an encyclopedia of all the lessons, and hopefully people will take away what's good and just not repeat the mistakes.
We're going to bring your pal, Tom Kuzmarsky, on in a moment here. In wrapping up this segment, are you at the stage of life where it's not about, hey, I need to like direct my thinking here, or not spend that much time looking at regrets or things you woulda, shoulda, coulda done, but at this stage of the game right now, what really, truly drives your passion?
I think that, you know, I really don't have any regrets, but I think that that the idea of making a difference in the lives of these students, and especially, you know, you understand that 40% of them are the first in their family to go to college. They start at the lowest 20% of the income world, and when they graduate as engineers, they're in the top 20%. This is transformational in their lives. In the city, we talk all the time about we don't have enough diverse technical talent. I feel like saying, here's a quarter, get on the CTA, come down to our campus, which is 10 minutes from downtown. And there are thousands of students that are diverse, are smart, that you just overlook because you think you have to go to Champaign for the University of Illinois or Northwestern or whatever. So this whole enterprise is about improving the diversity of the tech ecosystem in the city of Chicago. That's really the goal. And if you do that, you advance the reputation of the city, you advance the equality and sort of the distribution of income and the benefits of technology around the whole city. You certainly benefit these individual kids, but what the employers tell us is they're desperate to figure out how to solve this, and we think that we have a solution and a way to solve that, and that's really what I'm focused on for the next, you know, few years, however many years that is.
I noticed that somebody wheeled one of these books on my set.
Absolutely.
And I needed a forklift to get this up to like waist level. You wouldn't know who did that,
and
would
you
you,
need
Howard?
it was my assistant Jane Cedar for sure, but you need a magnifying glass in addition to read it. So you only have half the thing, but it's good for curls. It absolutely is good for curls.
Well, you can't win a race with your mouth.
Absolutely.
I think we proved that time and time again, don't we?
Absolutely.
This is the latest book. You're an absolutely brilliant writer.
Well, thank you.
And you're a
that.
social scientist. I mean, you're not just a guy that writes
A complainer. I'm a complainer.
You write about music, you write about science, you write about politics, you write about human achievement.
Yeah.
I think you're kind of right there where people are right now. I've just so enjoyed this first segment. I hate it to end. Audience, you hate this to end, right? We could just freaking keep on going here. But this is a natural place to take a pause. We'll be joined by Chicago Innovation's Tom Kuzmarsky momentarily, and we will be right back. Would you help me now welcome Mr. Tom Kuzmarsky? Among other things, the co-founder of Chicago Innovation and the founder and principal of Kuzmarsky Innovation. Take us through the evolution of Chicago Innovation. It's got a long and storied history. It's clearly brought together the entrepreneurial community for events, for the exchange of ideas, and for bearing witness to each other's advances in business.
Sure. So about 18 years ago, I kept looking and seeing Silicon Valley being the source of all innovation. But lo and behold, what was going on here in Chicago was pretty gosh darn amazing. And what I saw was that while we'll give Silicon Valley the leadership checkmark from a technology standpoint, what was going on here was a breadth of innovation. So that fintech and industrial goods and energy and consumer products and healthcare, on and on and on, companies both big and small, both nonprofit and for-profit, were innovating all of the time. So I wanted to try to shine a spotlight on all of the great innovations occurring here in Chicago, and also to try to inspire entrepreneurs that being an entrepreneur and being innovative could really make a difference and have a result that would be a positive one.
You've been around innovation and innovation management pretty much from all sectors. In reading about you, and I felt like I was a college student cramming for finals, trying to get all this stuff in my mind, but at the same time, you have broached corporate leadership, leadership development. You've covered all markets, all industries. Where there's innovation, there's Tom Kuzmarski. So what have you noticed? What have you picked up? What kind of stays in the knowledge bank, and how do you continually refresh yourself and make yourself relevant to entrepreneurs?
Well, one thing that I do that I think is imperative to stay fresh is I teach. And I teach at the Kellogg School of Management, and soon I'll be teaching with Howard at Kaplan Institute also. But if you're a really good teacher, it means that you're a really good listener. And so one of the benefits that I see in teaching is that you're able to hear the challenges, the problems, the issues. What is it that big companies and small companies are wrestling with on a daily basis, and then that keeps you current. But the other is, you got to stay current as a technologist these days. And so sometimes I'll have CEOs say to me, oh, well, yeah, but I've got people that do all that. And I go, no, you're the people, and you have to become the technologist for your company to be able to see where and how all of the trends in the marketplace are going to really affect you.
And you've got programs that are geared toward every aspect of humanity. I mean, from gender, from age, from individual market sectors. I mean, young people, old people, people trying to stay relevant. I'd love for you to talk about the programs as you've put them together and how you're driving them forward.
That's probably the thing I'm most proud about in terms of Chicago innovation, is that we really have created a community where people recognize that innovation is for everyone. And as Howard had mentioned, innovators, in our view, are the real stars of Chicago. And so in so doing, what we recognize is that we needed to reach out to a number of different types of constituents and segments. So for example, 4 years ago, we started the Women Mentoring Co-op. We saw the need for women mentors, especially in technology, but also in all businesses, to be able to have somebody that they could turn to learn from. That started with 25 female mentors. Now we have over 400, and they've created a small community of their own. 3 years ago, we started the Chicago Student Invention Convention. And this past year, we had 3,500 K through 8th graders create their own new invention. We had 350 people at Illinois Tech for the finals here in Chicago. And we had 45 of those kids, K through 8th graders, go to Dearborn, Michigan for the national finals. And 2 of our own 7th graders ended up creating a product called Charge Air, which is, think of a wind turbine that goes on the side of your car so that when your car is traveling, this is turning and generating electricity that then feeds back into your car. And they won the Visionaire Award. The third program that we've started, isn't that great? Yeah, it's great. They had 120,000 kids participate in this program too, so they were dynamite. And the third is, this year we took on a new challenge this past year, and that was, how do we address ageism in the workplace? And so we started a program called Ageless Innovators, which I think is the first ever intergenerational co-mentoring program. And we have some of our ageless innovators here tonight. But the key is to be able to view this as a co-mentor and be able to gain perspectives and really change the mindset by getting to know people intergenerationally. And it's just been a wonderful program to date.
The MultiGenerational Dynamic, which again, you're covering all aspects of it. As baby boomers start to kind of become more phased out of corporate
Sure.
America, they're starting businesses.
Yep.
They need this instruction just as much as the young people do, and the young people seem to be much more self-motivated than they used to be. I mean, it's certainly much different than when I was growing up.
Yep.
There was no entrepreneurship program. We just built these volcanoes for the science fair and failed miserably
Right.
when we saw the guy next to us or the gal next to us who had a much better display or exhibit. So now, from youth, at all stages of the life cycle, you have these resources in place, and you're helping people push forward. And it's not about winning contests, but it's truly about making an impact in the community. Now I'm going to ask you to take us back into your childhood, Tom. And when were you first sparked with innovation and entrepreneurialism? Where did you realize that you were on a path that would take you here?
Sure. Well, if you can believe it.
And by here I mean on this sofa.
Yeah. I was a 17th century French literature major at Holy Cross College. So I had zero ideas that I would ever become a bit in business or entrepreneurship. But when it actually started was when I moved to Chicago to work at the Quaker Oats Company in brand management. I was there for about 4 years. They put me in charge of new products, new areas, and I launched two. I launched Aunt Jemima frozen crepe batter, which lasted for 9 months in the marketplace before it died a quick death. But the second was Chewy Nut granola bar, which is still in the marketplace. And I was always so intrigued with why was it that one failed miserably and the other was very successful. And that's what really piqued my interest in innovation. And then I went to Booz Allen and Hamilton, and I started working with clients in this field, and then started my own innovation consulting firm, Kazmarski Innovation. And then along the way, if you can believe it, 39 years ago, Phil Kotler, who was a marketing professor and a very well-known marketing guru, was going to go on sabbatical. So my wife comes home one day, she was working in foundation relations at Northwestern, and said they're looking for a replacement for this Kellogg professor for just 1 semester. And I said, oh good, who's that? And she told me, and I said, well obviously I can't do that. Well, that was 39 years ago, and I've been teaching at Kellogg ever since. Yep.
Are companies just kind of feeling the pressure now, and they feel that they must innovate or die?
I'm sure we've got two different points of view on this. No, we don't. We always agree.
We always
Come
agree.
on, we always
It's
agree.
so boring.
I thought we were going to get edgy on that question.
Yeah,
That's why I asked it.
I think large corporations are beginning to recognize that they're in trouble from an innovation standpoint. If I look back 10 or 15 years ago, big corporations just kind of poo-pooed, for the most part, entrepreneurs. Because, oh, well, these are just the little people. Well, these little entrepreneurs are now the giants disrupting what large corporations have enjoyed for many, many years. And I think they're recognizing that. And so they're trying to figure it out. And well, they want to go after, and let's acquire some of these startups now, or let's make some partnerships or whatever. But what they really need to do is make innovation intentional within their organization and begin to allocate resources against it to make sure that it happens inside.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I think, well, first of all, I think that for the last 10 or 15 years, they've starved R&D because it's all been profit driven. And so in CPG, in the consumer sector, if you don't bring new products to the shelf about every 3 or 4 years, you discover that your entire product line has aged out and other people have innovated around you. But there's a couple of things that go into this. The first is there's way too much of a feeling that all innovation is related directly just to technology. And as Tom, has demonstrated, innovation has nothing to do with technology in many industries. It just has to do with improving these processes and things. The second thing, the huge sea change is this year, Netflix, to give you an idea, Netflix will produce as many films as all 5 of the Hollywood studios combined. 90 films this year, 2019. This is astonishing. Now, in the old days, when Tom said they'd look around for startups and then they'd buy the winners, that's how Hollywood progressed. They waited until somebody raised their head, and they had such a huge war chest that they could buy. So M&A was the path to innovation. Today, they can't afford it. None of the auto guys can buy Tesla. Nobody can buy, Google or Netflix. I mean, Netflix is more valuable by far than most of the Hollywood studios. So the thought that they could innovate by acquisition is pretty much gone now. And these people are trying to figure out what are they going to do. And frankly, the Hollywood studios are going to be remitted to being content providers, and the distribution channels and all the gatekeepers and all the revenue is going to be elsewhere. They're just, if you look at the charts, movie attendance is at a 20-year low. 20-year low, and it's not going to come back because it's another thing that people have so many alternatives to consume content that going to the movies is a diminishing sort of part of our
And they've
lives.
also monitored the habits of
Yeah.
people. They want their information on the run, everything on demand. They
Sure.
want to watch movies on the train.
Absolutely.
Or in their spare time in airports.
But you know what's so interesting about those examples too, Howard, is that when you look back before Netflix, there was this thing called Blockbuster.
Right.
And
Sure.
Blockbuster was everywhere,
Sure.
on every street corner, and we all used Blockbuster.
I actually called it Boxbuster because you'd go in and you'd see the box there, but when you would ask for the thing, they'd say, "Oh no, those are all out.
Those are out,
Here,
right.
we have this crappy movie here that we'd like to get you to rent. All the good ones are, somebody." So, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's such a great example where Netflix identified the problems that the consumer had with Blockbuster, addressed those, and then became the new
Well,
behemoth.
but again, it's funny because Netflix, it wasn't called Mailflix, but they first mailed out 2 billion of those little red envelopes with DVDs.
Yep.
And the most striking thing about Netflix is that 2 years into the development of the company, 99% of their revenue was from selling DVDs. And they heard the footsteps of Amazon, and they said, we're never going to win this battle. So they shut that part of their business down. 99% of their business shut down, focused entirely on streaming, reinvented the business, and that's why we have a streaming service now and not somebody who's still mailing us the discs in the little red envelopes.
Yeah.
And Tom, how do you see social media's role in all of this? I kind of want to weave social media into our discussion here.
Well, I think social media is absolutely critical and is absolutely key to the success of just about any new product or new service. I had a new book come out in May of last year called Lifting People Up, The Power of Recognition. And we created a rather extensive social media campaign for that. And it's the first time, I've published 7 books, and it's the first time we've really used social media to that extent, and it had a huge impact on sales. So I mean, I've even seen it myself, how it works. With Chicago Innovation now, we have 14,000 of our members are online. We have 11,000 in addition through social media. So it's almost 50-50 now, and is significant.
Well, so he's talking about social media as a business channel, and I agree with him. But for the sake of disagreement, as Lady Gaga says, social media is the toilet of the internet. And I
was
think,
wondering when you were going to come out with that quote.
and I think honestly that.
She's my hero, though.
Well, that's right. I think that it's very challenging, and I think that we're, the kids, it's just frightening what's going on in so many aspects of social media and the pressure and the different, things that are going on. So, yes, it's powerful, it's inexpensive. If you do it well, you have a connection and a level of engagement with your customers that never existed before. And it's everywhere, just as you said, and it's immediate. But it's also very challenging for these younger generations. It's just changed the game entirely.
You've assembled quite a team for Chicago Innovation. You throw amazing events, terrific events, fabulous events. And let's talk about how the community comes together to support this vision. It's not just about you saying, we want Chicago to be this hub, this place, we want to bring new businesses in, here's where you need to start your venture. But now let's talk about how the brand of Chicago is playing into what you're doing and what you do with each event and what you do with each of your books and kind of molding the Chicago entrepreneur as a microcosm of the global entrepreneur.
Great question. Well, first of all, I've got the best team in Chicago running Chicago Innovation. So,
would you like to mention them by name?
Yeah, like Luke Tannen and Paul Kitty and
all right.
and great other people that are doing all this hard work. But I think there's 2 things that we did right at the beginning. The first was to really believe in collaboration. that we don't have any competitors and that we're all in this for one purpose, and that's Team Chicago, and to really support innovators and entrepreneurs in the entire Chicago region. So one was a real strong belief in collaboration, and that stems back to what I said earlier in terms of innovation is for everyone. But the other was to really address what were the needs of innovators in the marketplace. And that's where educate, connect, provide insight, celebrate, all of that came from them. So we just listened to entrepreneurs and to innovators and then have tried to develop programs to address that. But I'll tell you our secret sauce. Our secret sauce is that if you come to a Chicago Innovation event, you don't come and have chicken and peas for dinner. So you'll see balloons up in the sky, you'll see drones serving appetizers, you'll have speakers of a wide variety of different, so we make sure that they're also fun and not just educational and connecting to. And
they're
our team
unique
does
and
a
cool.
great job.
Absolutely. Can Chicago be the global model for something like this? Are we doing things here that no one else is doing?
Chicago already is.
Yeah,
Chicago already is a model.
Let me say two things. One
ecosystem.
is I think everybody says this, but I mean I think it's become true, which is I don't believe that we aspire to be the Silicon Valley of any place. I think we want to be our own thing, and I think we are increasingly, from a work ethic, from a whole bunch of different sort of concerns about profitability and scale and things like that. I think we are our own, ecosystem and our own story.
I have one question from the audience. Everybody was busy networking and feeding themselves.
An analog
and I've got
question
one
here.
question
Very
from the
nice.
audience. And I'm going to read it because I have not memorized it. And this is from young Kim Svoboda here, sitting in the front row. In the corporate environment, innovation is an imperative for most. How does good or bad leadership play a role in innovation?
You want to start?
Yeah. They have to learn how to behave better. And learning how to behave better, for me, means three things. The first is they really need to allocate resources against innovation. Let me tell you the thing that drives me crazy is when I hear the CEO or the COO say, I want everybody to innovate every day. So, go to your cubicle or go to your office and be creative and be innovative. And it's like, no. Innovation is a team sport. It's not an individual sport. So that means, by definition, that you need a cross-functional team of people. It doesn't be a big team. It can be 3, 4, 5, 6 people, but you need a team of people in order for innovation to work. So you've got to behave in that way. You've got to allocate resources. The second is you've got to give people time. So back in the dot-com days, I'd hear CEOs would say, no, we got to be in the market within 90 days. So come up with this and create it and do the prototype, be in there in 90 days. I go, it takes a little bit longer than 90 days. And so the key to it is viewing innovation as an ongoing business endeavor so that you're constantly, doing innovation as opposed to trying to just do it so quick. And the last thing is change the incentive systems. Start giving rewards to people that are really creating successes in the marketplace as opposed to just giving everybody the base salary and X% bonus.
When we look at the next 5 years, the singly most important thing we're going to hear 1,000 times a day is data analytics, and then the second most important thing will be artificial intelligence.
Sure.
And artificial intelligence, they think, comes because you hire a data scientist or two. And what they don't really understand is that's a third of the equation. One is the technical guy or girl. Number two is the IT people who tell him where the data is that he's going to manage. And number three is the executive team that has the domain expertise that solves the problem, that says, what's the problem? Because the first two could go off into the wonderland and come back with something that was the absolute best solution for no problem that ever existed. Or the greatest software never sold. And if it's not engaged and connected to real concerns of the company, which can only come from the management, it's not going to be successful. So you need three legs to the stool in order to really pull this off. I think that the advice I always give is that the parents should not be preparing the path for the kids. They should be preparing the kids for the path. And that is to not spend your time sort of clearing obstacles and everything else, but encourage your kid to take on those obstacles, because that's the only way they're going to be successful once they do sort of get out of your orbit and your ambit. So, you know, we have helicopter parents, we have a lot of different kinds of issues going on. I think what you want to do is teach your kid, by the way, your kids, the next sort of set of skills also. And the skills are not going to be in a world of Google memorization. They're not going to be these things. They're going to be curiosity, they're going to be problem solving, they're going to be storytelling for sure, and understanding the process of iteration. This is the singly most important thing, is that everything gets better over time, but only if you work at that. And I think kids in sports, kids in band, you know, when you go into school today, the people who have their lights on in their heads are the kids engaged in anything but the core curriculum. It's really depressing, but it's true. It can be the chess kids, the robotics kids, the band kids, the sports kids, and it's because they take ownership and they're part of a team. And that's what we have to make the rest of their education become, because if kids say that school is the most boring place they go, it's pretty depressing.
I want to thank you both for being here. Howard Tullman, who is the Executive Director of the Ed Kaplan Family Institute for Innovation and Tech Entrepreneurship.
Thank you.
And Mr. Tom Kuzmarski, who is the co-founder of Chicago Innovation and also principal of Kuzmarski Innovation. This is one KI, this is the other KI. What do we think of these gents? Now, show of hands on the set. Show of hands. How many people are celebrating a birthday here today?
Show of hands. Show of hands.
This is a...
Folks, it's Howard's birthday.
Yay! Happy
Thank you.
birthday.
Oh, look at this.
Typically, I would have something ready to go for this birthday.
Thank you all very much. Great. Thank you.
Thanks, gents, and a big thanks to Zacuto Studios, where we taped today. Big thanks to Steve Weiss. Big thanks to Roger Quagliano. And thank you for being here. Thank you, gents.